Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. Afternoon to the news you need to know about. We're going to thank you, Nay, where we answer Fins fans' questions. So much to talk about in today's show. Obviously, the biggest news of the day is the Jalen Ramsey situation, which I did not see coming. Chris Greer, another big-time trade since Mike McDaniel has been here, which is awesome. Cannot wait to talk about. So much to go into that. But let's start with the lesser news stories. This first news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins to pick up Tua Tagovailoa's fifth-year option, which guarantees his money for the 2024 season. So it kind of prolongs his rookie deal. He's guaranteed $23 million next year. I don't have it really. I mean, I think it's the same thing that everybody keeps repeating with Tua. As long as he stays healthy, and I think we definitely need to. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. I was about to sneeze. But it's not just the health. There are things we need to do to improve the offensive side of the football. Even though it was one of the most efficient, best passing seasons we've had since Dan Marino walked through the door. It's not even close. And he was a big part of that and the reason why it worked so well. But to keep him healthy and to improve the offense, which does have flaws, the right tackle position was inconsistent at best. Brandon Shell did come in and play good football for us. The run game was non-existent. It was too inconsistent. There wasn't a reliable third playmaker on the offensive side of the football. And I think some of those things led to the poor quarterback play, at least for Tua, in the last month of the season. When Tua left, there was a significant drop in quarterback play to Teddy and Skyler. All you have to do is just go watch the games that the players played in. One of the worst ones is the New England game on the road and the Buffalo Bill playoff game. Those were really, really bad. There was a lot of players that were open, that were not hit. The reads weren't there. The quarterbacks weren't seeing the field well enough. The whole thing was bad. And it's one of the big reasons why our record wasn't better. That and the defensive stuff that we've went through a million times and we'll probably go through again a little bit on this podcast, but because of the Jalen Ramsey situation. But there are still things that this team needs to do in the offseason. Even after the Jalen Ramsey trade, they still have $11 million in cap space. That's without the Byron Jones. That figure is without Byron Jones being cut. And shout out to all the boys taking restructuring their contract to make this possible. But they still have things that they need. I still think the biggest need of the offseason is the tackle position. I still feel like they need to fill those shoes somehow. There's no way we go into another season relying on Austin Jackson to progress in his career. They just need someone that they know that they can rely upon to play good football. And not only in the pass protection side of things, but the run game. I'm actually okay with the interior. I think Connor Williams and Robert Hunt at the guard position and center position is really solid. It's just that tackle position that I think that limits the offense to the point where they have to compensate for it, and it leads to, less efficient quarterback play, and it messes with Tua's. If you're going to invest in him not only with money, but build the team the right way, make sure he's protected, and improve the offensive line. That has to be one of the things that they've looked at the tape and just have to fix. There's a lot of really good options between Mike McGlinchey, who I think is a perfect fit, obviously had a lot of success in the same offense, and would be a perfect fit. And he's a great run blocker. But there's a lot of offensive linemen out there that they could sign, and hopefully Chris will take it seriously this year. And I'm sick of the whole Austin Jackson thing. I don't know, I know they were happy with what he did in training camp last year. But again, this comes down to Tua's health, making sure he can make it, over 13 games at least, and make sure he can play games in December. Obviously the concussions are a big deal. A lot was made by the concussions in the media. And the Bengals game is probably going to be burned into everybody's mind. So you have to do everything you can to prevent that and, lessen the hits that he takes. So I think Mike McDaniel's scheme, out of any scheme that I've seen in Miami for many years, did a great job of protecting him. But it did, like I said, it limited the offense. It puts Tua in jeopardy. And they need to fix that position, in my opinion. And Armstead, who, when he's healthy, is fantastic. Maybe they keep Brandon Shell. And obviously they could keep Austin Jackson too as depth at those positions. But I just don't think they're starters in the NFL. And I think they need more than above average tackle play, especially after the season we just had. It's like, how do you not look at that and say, all right, let's improve this as much as we can? And maybe that's where the premium, if he's going to be our quarterback, that's where we should invest in. He is a pocket passer. He does most of the damage from the pocket. Every NFL franchise that has had somebody like that has invested into the offensive line heavily. When you look at New Orleans, New England, some of the bigger names, obviously, over the years, Peyton Manning, they always had good offensive line. So Big Ben is another great example. So I hope they at least come out of even if they get someone like Taylor Lewan, I would be happy with that. Obviously, he's had some injury stuff in recent memory, at least, but anything to improve the offensive line. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do at the running back position and the tight end position, because there isn't one on the roster right now. So those are some of the things that I think are going to be interesting to watch in free agency. And again, picking up to his fifth-year option, I just feel like they have to do everything that they can. It should be an offseason about protecting him and taking pressure off him as much as you can. The run game was non-existent. We averaged under 100 yards rushing a game. It was one of the more inconsistent aspects of the team. And it really made us one-dimensional. Everything had to be a big play. Everything had to be a chunk play. And despite popular narrative belief, a lot of that stuff did not come off of screens and really short passes for the most part. A lot of it was deep down the field stuff, or someone caught a deep crosser and then ran it into the end zone, mainly Jalen Waddle. But most of it was big plays. It wasn't off of easy stuff like screens and runs to keep efficient offense going. So it was one of the most glaring weaknesses. I hope it's fixed in free agency so we can sustain longer drives, and it doesn't have to be chunk plays all the time. It doesn't have to be down the field all the time. They can attack offense or defenses in different ways, and I think that's going to be a big aspect of this offseason. And they still have their second-round pick. They still have $11 million in cap space. That's without getting rid of Byron Jones' contract. Again, let me reiterate that, which will happen, obviously. So I'm excited to see what Chris does. But again, I just think that this offseason should be about protecting Tua as much as possible. We can get a running back or a tight end. We can re-sign Raheem Mostert or draft a tight end. I just don't think that's as big of a deal as getting a premier edge offensive lineman, in my opinion. And they have a great opportunity to get one this offseason. Larry Tunsil's apparently on the trade block. That could be an avenue that they explore as well. Reuniting him in Miami would be cool. I think Mike Lynch would probably be my number one, though, because of the fit. And because he's such a great run blocker. He could really help out the run game. Let me see if there's no real rumors going on right now, which I think is interesting. I know there's a couple of big names that Dolphins fans, like Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook. I just really don't think that they should invest that much cap space into the running back position. It really just depends on if they're really that delusional and think, okay, we can go into another season with Austin Jackson. I just don't think they are. So we'll see what they do. This is great news. Dolphins eyeing an extension for defensive tackle Christian Wilkins. Again, this comes from Pro Football Rumors, and it would also lessen his cap hit. They could decrease that by a pretty good amount, so we could save some cap space by extending him and Connor Williams. Which I want to read you guys the cap figures here while we're talking about the cap. This is one of the cap figures that I wanted to read because it's pretty impressive. This is why Chris Greer, I think, is actually a pretty good GM. His management of salary cap is probably the best in the NFL. They only have $3 million in dead money, which is a big deal. And the way that the contracts are constructed, I think, is very smart. And we talked about this earlier in the year, that they could restructure a lot of these contracts and free up space. And he's done that since he's been a GM. So shout out to Chris Greer. He's done a really good job of managing the money in Miami. I mean, especially when you compare the way our cap looks since Chris has taken over and become kind of like the head of the front office, compared to people like Dennis Hickey and Jeff Ireland, like and Mike Tannenbaum, it's not even close. I mean, you know how much dead cap we had, and that we got out from under in 2019? It was insane. And he's just done a really good job of managing it. It's wild that Eric Fisher has a $2 million dead cap hit. That's by far the most. The second closest is $600,000, and that's Chase Edmonds. Third is Solomon Kinley, for God's sakes. So I just wanted to bring that up. And again, the Dolphins currently, after the Jalen Ramsey trade, have $11 million, and that is before if they extend someone like Christian Wilkins, and then if they cut Byron Jones, we'll see what they can free up even more space, even after the Jalen Ramsey trade, which is crazy. And the Rams are taking a big dead cap hit as well with that trade. But anyway, back to the story, or the news story. The Christian Wilkins is most likely going to get an extension this year. Sorry, guys, I'm trying not to sneeze, but he deserves it. The first couple years, I was like, all right, he'll probably be a good starter. He's one of the more like non-exciting, underwhelming first-round picks. I remember that draft. I mean, it's never like fun taking an interior lineman with a first-round pick, but he has just blown, I think, all of our expectations out of the water. He's improved every year he's been in the league, and he's become a Pro Bowl caliber player. And I think he made second or third team that All Pro this year, which is pretty special. That could be wrong, but he should be a Pro Bowler. He's fantastic, and he's a great defensive lineman, and I think he's going to have a really good year, especially with Vic Fangio, who just betters the careers of every defender he's ever coached. So I think the sky is the limit with him. Obviously a great locker room guy, glue guy, fan favorite. He's become one of my favorite players on the team, and it didn't start off that way. I think for most Dolphins fans it probably didn't, but he's definitely, I think, warmed up to the fan base and become, like I said, a fan favorite. And now you have, which we're about to talk about, but the defensive line is just really deep. A lot of depth on it. One of the best defensive tackle dudes in Zach and Christian. And then you have Emmanuel Ogbah basically coming off the bench, who can play inside as well, is pretty special. And Vic Fangio coaching that front seven is going to be really fun to watch. So let's get to the big news story of the day, which is wild. Did not expect this to happen. This last news story of the day, Dolphins acquired Jalen Ramsey from the Los Angeles Rams for a third-round pick, the 77th pick in the draft, and Hunter Long was the trade. Now, when this initially happened, and the Dolphins, let me say this before I continue. He's 28 years old. They also guaranteed his money over the next 2 years, which is actually not bad. The cap figure is pretty, I think it's like $17 million. It might. I think the last might be 20. But and the Rams are paying some of that money as well. They paid some of that money at least. Maybe it was this year. I'm not sure, but they're paying $19 million or something like that. Yeah, it's when I first saw this, I actually heard about it. My brother told me about it, but when I first heard about it, the first thing I thought of was like, okay, what did we give up for him? Because that's why I was kind of, when I was hearing the Jalen Ramsey rumors, it was like not really a big need. Don't really want to invest too much of our assets towards that, obviously. This was before the whole Byron Jones thing popped off. But I was like, what did we give up for him? The fact that we only gave up a third-round pick and a tight end that has not lived up to his potential, and a lot of that had to do with some off-the-field stuff. And I was a big fan of Hunter Long out of Boston College. I really liked him. He just never grew into the player that I thought he could be. And that obviously is unfortunate because he really fit the scheme that we were running too. But anyway, the point is that we gave up nothing for Jalen Ramsey, which is wild. Like, if you would have told me that it would take a third-round pick and a tight end that never plays, obviously you would make that trade. And now the Dolphins have, I think, the best talented, and a lot of people aren't bringing up, like, I feel like overall, now the middle linebacker position is going to be interesting. You know, we've heard a lot of chatter, especially at the Combine, that they like Channing Tindall a lot. And he has a lot of really special athletic traits, obviously. Very explosive player. But it's going to be interesting. That's really the only, that's the only question mark on the defense. Everywhere else has a young, talented player there. I know some people are worried about the other safety spot, but personally, I like Brandon Jones a lot. I think his covering skills, first of all, he's not asked to do that very often. And I don't think he will be in this defense, but he's gotten a lot better at that. So it's just a really talented defense. And it was talented last year. It just was riddled with injuries, was not coached well, and that led to what it was. But I think that with the addition, again, I said this before Jalen even came here, Vic is going to make such a big difference and really get the talent out of the defense and let them reach their potential, that this trade it's wild. And again, even after Tyreek Hill played an entire season with us and obviously was well worth the trade, almost had 2,000 yards. Maybe if 2 didn't get hurt, he would have gotten closer. But it's just like sometimes I look at the roster and I'm like, this isn't real. Like, it is very strange. I've been doing this podcast since, the Brock Osweiler years the Adam Gase year. It doesn't, this is the best team we've had in a long time. And it just doesn't feel, it's like Jalen Ramsey is a Dolphin, Tyreek Hill is a Dolphin. There's stars everywhere on our roster. And we have a really good coaching staff now as well. It just blows my mind when you think about it. So, it's been a phenomenal trade. Honestly, probably the best trade that they've made so far in terms of just not giving up jack squat for him. There's really no downside to this trade. And then I know maybe some people would bring up his recent play, which is why I have these stats right here. He's only 28 years old, which he's still in his prime. He really only has 2 years left on a deal that's pretty cheap for his attributes. And I have some stats for you guys. Let me get these for you guys. And this also takes a lot of pressure off of X. And I know a lot of people have said that, and obviously I think the scheme itself, even if Jalen Ramsey wasn't coming here, the scheme itself would take a lot of pressure off of X. It's not something. Some of the defenses that we asked him to play last year were absurd, and I don't think people really. They just look at the stats or listen to the narrative. If you just watch the games, some of the stuff that we asked him to do was insane. It was not right. It was very stupid. I don't know why we did it to him. We put a lot of our defensive linemen in bad spots as well. Some of the stuff we did last year was absolutely ridiculous. Like, should never be on an NFL field. And we paid for it, obviously, with just look at the defensive numbers. But you add the Vic Fangio factor. I just think Xavier's going to have a career year, and he's going to get back to that turnover machine that we know him to be. It's going to really free him up to be to be the player that he's supposed to be. So this trade is phenomenal. So this is some of the stats. This is last year. Jalen Ramsey against the Broncos, and again, I know it's the Broncos, but they have some talented players. Only had 2 receptions on him. Jalen Ramsey against the Packers had 0 receptions on him. Jalen Ramsey against Devontae had 2 receptions on him and 0 in the second half. Jalen against the Seahawks, and obviously DK Metcalf had 1 reception on him. So I just wanted to bring those stats up. He's still one of the best defenders in the National Football League. And one of the things when I went, obviously, as soon as he was a Dolphin, I was like, let me go watch what he did last year. He still has one of his best talents, his makeup speed and his explosiveness to drive on a football when receivers come in and out of their breaks is probably the best in the NFL. I think his feet and his ability to twist and turn, his body control, especially for someone who's as physical as he is and as big as him, I have never really seen anything like that. And he still has that ability. And I think another big part of his game that's special, he's versatile, you can move him around, and he's a physical corner. Like, by far the most physical corner in the NFL. It's not even close. And he's a phenomenal open field tackler. He plays with a lot of swagger, which I think is something that Tyreek Hill brought to the offense last year. And I think he can bring that to the defense this year. But yeah, he still has that special, like I just said, that's just special explosiveness. His makeup speed is special still. And his explosiveness to drive on a football, to follow receivers in and out of their breaks is really, really something. And it looks easy for him. I mean, this dude is doing this stuff without grabbing and losing technique. He's literally looking at the quarterback the entire time. And another great thing about Jalen Ramsey, he has that Richard Sherman. He's way more athletically gifted than Richard Sherman ever was, but he plays the game at a very high level. And I'm talking about in terms of like knowing where to be, knowing what the quarterback wants, what the route combination is, where to kind of fade back into if he's playing zone. You know, he has all. He really does have it all. And Vic Fangio is going to really, I'm sure he was asked about him. He's like, do you think he's, and obviously Vic, and that's one of the things that I love about this version of this Dolphins organization is the communication seems to be off the chain with everybody in the organization. And that's one of the things that I was worried about with the Tua thing is like, I hope it isn't, that aspect isn't deteriorating. Because obviously Chris asked Mike McDaniel about Tyreek Hill, and he went to go watch film on him, and then he went back to Chris and was like, yes, absolutely make the trade. And I would assume the same thing happened with Jalen, but the communication in the Dolphins organization seems to be pretty awesome. And I'm happy that those rumors about the quarterback situation wasn't true, because everything that they said in the offseason, they meant. And they weren't bold-faced lies. Like some other, like the Brian Flores ran or the Adam Gase one, there's just too many cooks in the kitchen. And that doesn't seem to be the case now. But, yeah, I love Jalen Ramsey. Still one of the best defenders in the NFL. It's wild that he's a Dolphin. It doesn't seem real. And you pair him with Vic Fangio. Chris has really improved an already really talented defense, in my opinion. And players like Kader Kohu, who had a phenomenal rookie season, made the all-rookie team. Cater's a really good player. Very similar to Jalen, very physical, not as big, and probably not as explosive, but still really very athletic. I don't know. Cater's pretty explosive. Maybe has better straight line speed than Jalen, but Jalen just has that special ability to just explode when the ball's in the air, and just get there. Like, if you just go watch Jalen Ramsey, some of the stuff that it looks like someone's open, and then as soon as the ball's in the air, his closing distance speed is special. But that's one heck of a cornerback room. This could go down, and I'm not, you know what, maybe I won't get too crazy with it, because obviously the 70s secondary was pretty special as well, but this could go down as the best Dolphins secondary ever. And the early 2000s secondary was really special as well. But this one has a chance to be, like, all-time great. I think that's it for the news. I think we covered it. Big thumbs up with the Jalen Ramsey things. We talked about what the Dolphins need to do at the beginning of the show. I would really love Mike McGlinchey. The tackle market is just too good this free agency class not to, I feel like, take advantage of that. But to me, that's the only weakness of this team. Okay, is the tackle position. That's the only hole. Everywhere else is great. I wouldn't mind if they could somehow swing it, obviously, to add quarterback depth. That's why I think the Mike White situation is perfect. Those are the two things I just need this offseason. Quarterback depth and a new tackle. That's it. That's all I ask, Chris Greer. That's it. Which I think they can achieve. So let's go to the thank you now. What a time to be a Dolphins fan. And just back-to-back so far, at least, great off seasons. And it's wild that Cater Code just fell in their lap as an undrafted rookie. Shout out to Josh Boyer. That was the last great thing he ever did. And obviously, he was a big part of getting him. And the New England guys are really good at getting secondary people. Obviously Nick Needham's another great example of that. This first question, and only question, comes from Ethan. He says, seeing that we have restructured most of our guys and appear to be going all in on this current window, what are your top 3 free agent splash signings? In a dream-like scenario, I would, and obviously this is impossible, but maybe it's not, but I would love Mike McGlinchey. I think I would, between Gardner Minshew, who I think his market's probably a little bit higher, but Gardner Minshew or Mike White would be great as a backup quarterback. And then I think 3, I'm trying to think. Dalton Schultz, I think, to me, I would rather draft a tight end, so he's off the board. I wouldn't mind Dalton Schultz, but it's like I don't really want to invest cap space into that. Bobby Wagner would be cool. That would just be cool. But I don't think it's a need. And a running back. I think a running back, maybe a trade. I'm not in love with the free agency class of running backs this year, especially with pretty much the top 2 getting one, obviously both actually getting tagged. So just maybe re-sign Raheem Mostert. And I'm a huge Jahmyr Gibbs fan. Like, I love him. I love him as a player. So maybe I think we should address that through the draft. So I would just stick with my top 2 free agent splashes would be Mike McGlinchey, and then 2, a backup quarterback, whether that's Minshew / Mike White, and then 3, I would say probably Bobby Wagner, because I don't think tight end or running back. There's just no one that I'm like, all right, that I would just rather have Raheem Mostert and draft a running back. And tight end, there's just really no answers there, unless you're like a big Foster Moreau fan. If you're a big Foster Moreau fan, you're a big Foster Moreau fan. But I just would rather have those other players. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. I can't wait to recap the first week of free agency because I think a lot of those names like Mike McGlinchey, Orlando Brown, who's another tackle, the Jaguars tackle whose name's escaping me right now. Laramie Tunsil, who I could totally see being traded. Maybe the Dolphins explore that. Obviously, Chris has a lot of relationships in Houston, so it'll be interesting to see what they do. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys enjoyed. It's a phenomenal time to be a Fins fan. A lot of really cool, just superstars, really, on the defense and offense. And which, honestly, I think is a sneakily... I think people just look at the numbers, but this defense is really good. And I think it's probably the most complete unit out of any of the units on the team, in my opinion. It's really talented. So that's it. And with Vic Fangio, ooh, Lord. Yeah, that's it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Can't wait to recap free agency.